Hey, movie lovers, welcome to a special episode of the Does It Hold Up podcast. I'm Adam.
And I'm Emily.
And today we wanted to talk about the history of the clique culture in film, because if you had watched our previous episode, we talked about The Breakfast Club by the one and only John Hughes, who, in my opinion, is basically the godfather of clique culture in film. I understand that some came before him, but a lot came after him. And you can definitely feel his influence on all the movies that came after him.
And honestly, The Breakfast Club is what everyone thinks of as the go-to movie to kind of show off clique culture in film.
Right, and that was 1985. In 84, he also had 16 Candles. In 85, he had Weird Science as well. In 86, he had Pretty in Pink. Again, in 86, he had Ferris Bueller's Day Off. These are all things that show that clique culture. And we wanted to talk about that effect in film going forward, and maybe how it's evolved, changed, and where we think it might go moving past 2023. So we wanted to break things down into decades. So first up, we want to talk about the 1980s, since that was where it kind of came to prominence with The Breakfast Club, or possibly 16 Candles, but I think, like you said, Breakfast Club is really where that idea came from.
I mean, the idea of Breakfast Club is that is the central plot to The Breakfast Club, is having those different types of cliques and how they interact.
Exactly. So that's the first movie actually on my list, 1985's The Breakfast Club. And this is where that strong divide started. In that movie, that's where you had the brain, the basket case, the jock, the princess, and the criminal. And they were clear divides. The princess could hang out with the jock, but the jock wasn't hanging out with the brain. The brain wasn't hanging out with the criminal. Everybody had their social group, and they stuck to it. This movie blurs the lines a little by the end, but mostly just for these 5 people. I don't think the school's going to change based on what happened at this one Saturday detention.
And to be fair, we're not actually sure that they do change by the end, simply because the day ends right then and there, with it still just being those 5 people. We didn't get to see them come Monday and see what happens when they're actually with their other groups.
Exactly. So, a very interesting thing. Then in 1986, John Hughes also put out Pretty in Pink, which again is about social acceptance and the different groups that you can be divided into. And here, the woman is dealing with her relationships. She wants somebody she can't have, and the one that she could have isn't in the right social group, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that movie, again, you're trying to blur the lines, but with individuals, not breaking down the actual barricades that separate these people.
Yeah.
Again, John Hughes. So he understands that we want to see that divide gone, but he won't give it to us enough to really make it significant. He wants to keep it localized to that one person that we're following. In 1988, I know this is a movie that you love.
I do.
Heathers.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of Heathers is they're the Heathers. They're better than you.
I mean, you have to be a Heather to be in this group. Or a Veronica, maybe.
Who fakes being a Heather.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in that movie also, it's not just the women. The men are divided as well. Like, he's a little too cool for school, but he's not exactly a jock.
Oh, he's definitely not a jock. In fact, he goes after jocks at one point, pulling a weapon on them, you know? Just to be like, I'm so edgy, I'm the criminal, basically. Keeping those stereotypes alive.
Keeping those stereotypes alive, and that's late. That's 3 years after The Breakfast Club. So you can see its influence. I want to jump ahead to the 90s now. We're only going to do 3 movies per decade. There are plenty of more, and we would love to hear in the comments other movies you guys think really focus on these social cliques in high school or in the real world. Let us know what you think. But in the 90s, starting off with 1995's Clueless, a decade on from The Breakfast Club. And this is so influenced by The Breakfast Club because Cher is a princess. That's not what she's called in the movie because they don't really put a label on her. But she labels a lot of other people. You have the stoners, you have the jocks, you have the pretty boys.
The skaters.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And Cher's a princess. But what she does is she takes somebody who's not a part of her group, dresses them all up to look like her, welcomes her in, but that woman, that girl, wants a skater boy. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Avril Lavigne on that one. Skater boy. And so, once again, we get that blurring of the lines, but only for our protagonist. It doesn't seem to have an effect on the people outside of that individual.
Yeah.
You don't see Dion hooking up with other people or making friends with other people. It's just Cher.
Yeah. Because it's, at this point, still that whole idea of you have to be in one group or another, and to go beyond that, you have to be someone special. And so that's why it's only our protagonist at this point.
Absolutely. Then we go to 1998's Can't Hardly Wait. And this is a movie about a party that happens after school, but you still get all of those groups. You get the popular girls, the nerdy boys, the stoners, the partiers, the jocks. You're still separated into those groups. And once again, we only really get to see two people cross the lines. And that's our main two people we're following throughout the entire movie. They get together at the end. She's a popular girl. He's a little bit of a nerdy boy. They still get together. But it's just them. Everybody else is still very divided at that point. Mm-hmm. And maybe some other people kind of cross the lines, but they're drunk. So do we really trust that that's how the status quo is going to change? Or is it going to stay exactly the status quo at the end of this movie?
Well, it's really hard with movies like this, and going back to like The Breakfast Club, when it's showing it only on one day, it's like things can be different for one day, and then it goes right back to the status quo. We don't know because we have such a limited view of their world.
Circumstantial. Mm-hmm. That circumstance made them change, but as soon as that is gone, do they continue the change, or do they just revert back to who they were?
Yeah.
Then in 1999, we get 10 Things I Hate About You. Once again, we have Heath Ledger plays a criminal, for lack of a better term. He's the Bender of that movie. Then you have Julia Stiles, who plays a feminist. You have her sister Bianca, who's the popular girl. You have Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing a character who
is the brain.
Is the brain. Well, not really. He's not that smart. His best friend is the brain. Mm-hmm. He's more of our window into all of those groups because he doesn't fit into one.
Is he the normal?
He's the normal, quote unquote. This is where I see the movie's trying to break away from that and giving you an individual who can understand each group but can bounce from one to the other without feeling out of place. He can talk to Joey the jock or the popular guy, the good-looking GQ model. Mm-hmm. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character can talk to him, no problem. I mean, it's a problem because they don't like each other, those two, but he could cross into that group.
Yeah.
He obviously is friends with the brain. He is friends with a feminist. He makes friends with the criminal. He's that person who gets to bounce around. And this is that movie that really, I think, tried to break the mold a little bit. Realized, like, ooh, if we just put some cracks here, mm-hmm. maybe we can change things.
Yeah. You really start seeing those divides lessen. Like, they're still really, like, you are one thing. Except for, like, a few of you, which will sprinkle in the tiniest little bit of, like, something else. Like Heath Ledger's character. You are the criminal until the plot needs you to kind of soften up, you know?
And be a feminist, or with the feminist at least. Because when him and Julia Stiles' character get together at the end, they haven't changed who they are. They just have crossed the lines. It's almost like a Romeo and Juliet style, mm-hmm. where they are completely from different groups, but they're going to break those rules to be together. But will that affect the people around them?
Yeah.
Then I want to jump forward to the 2000s. 2004, we get Mean Girls. And I think this is a step backwards.
I was going to say that in the exact same words.
Okay, go ahead and tell me about that.
This movie is very much about cliques. I mean, we get an entire scene about the clique culture in the lunchroom of this new school. And it is so clearly divided and no one changes. Basically, they dissolve the plastics, but basically they dissolve into other cliques. Mm-hmm. They make a specific reference to Gretchen Wieners now being, she found a new queen bee to serve.
She
and
Yes.
won't even like talk to them now.
She's part of the Asian club now,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Yeah, Gretchen's the one who tries to make fetch happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the one who's part of like an Asian group now. And then you have the blonde, and I can't remember her name,
Karen.
Amanda Seyfried.
Karen.
Who is part of Katie's group now. She's realized, oh, maybe she's a little bit of a weirdo, a nerd.
A free spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the main plastic,
Regina.
has become a jock.
Yeah.
She found lacrosse, and there she is.
Yeah.
So this movie did a really good job of like, we need to end this divide and trying to get people involved in it. But by the end of the movie, they're right back to the status quo. All they did was take one group and only change it for a short period of time, because at the end of that movie, they show freshmen incoming who are the new plastics. They didn't even get rid of that group. They just ended the current iteration of it.
Yeah. So it's like, it was almost a backwards thought of the idea of fixing clique culture, because it was like, okay, well, we can do it for our year, but that's not going to do anything for the rest of time.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep happening.
And if you want to know more about what we thought of Mean Girls, you should check out our episode on Mean Girls and see if it still holds up. In 2005, we get a little murder mystery movie called Brick from director Rian Johnson. I know this isn't one that you've ever seen, but it's a really interesting take. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's in this one as well. And there's a murder that happens at the school. Well, with the students. And he goes around trying to solve this murder, but what he has to do is he has to basically ingrain himself in different groups to get the information that he needs. And he starts to realize that maybe because you're part of this group doesn't make you one way. You can be a complex person even though you've been labeled one specific thing. The drug dealer has a lot more to him than just a drug dealer.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting take, and I think it could have done a lot more to break down clique culture, but we needed the cliques in this to tell the story. And Rian Johnson's goal was never to break down the walls of high school. It was to show that because of these divides, things like a murder can just disappear. Because no group wants to talk to another group or figure things out. So he established that big-ass wall between each group and how it's really hard to break down. And once again, he gives us the protagonist is our eyes into how you can move between each group, but it's not likely you're going to.
Yeah.
Very much a throwback to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character in 10 Things I Hate About You, bouncing around, but you can still see it's not for everyone. Not everyone is able to do that. Then in 2006, we get High School Musical. And I actually really like this one.
I do too.
Tell me why.
This movie, it's centered around the whole idea of cliques and being in this group and being just this group. So if you're a jock, you're only a jock. If you're a music person, you're only a music person. And this movie's whole plot is around breaking those. We literally get a song in it called The Status Quo, in which we hear, a basketball player likes to bake souffles. And
Creme brulee.
Creme brulee, sorry. My bad. A nerdy person likes to do hip-hop dancing.
Yep.
So
She loves pop and lock.
Pop and lock.
Yeah.
Something that I don't think is a thing anymore.
But also, by the end of this movie, why I like it so much is by the end of this movie, you get the star basketball player is also the lead in the school musical. But he doesn't have to give up one or the other. He gets to do both. They actually officially break status quo. Now we get into a little bit of an issue when we go into the second movie, because it feels like maybe we've reverted a little bit and they've made new divides.
Yeah.
But we still get a coming together at the end of this movie of, no. There is no status quo. You like what you like. Hang out with who you want to hang out with. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. We literally see that same basketball player having baked goods at the end.
Yes.
He
bakes cookies.
I really appreciate the fact that this one was willing to say, hey, these divides exist, but they don't have to.
Correct. This was the first movie on our list that clearly defines you can do more than one thing. You can be more than one thing.
And the social pressure that others put on you to stay in your lane.
Yes. But if you just have the power or the willingness to step outside of your lane, imagine the world that you could live in.
Yeah.
Then we go to the 2010s. And in 2010, we get Easy A. And this is a comedy, so I understand you can't just have it be free will of everything happening, because where are you going to get some of the comedy from? But this is, once again, a step back from the high school movies like High School Musical that we got in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
Because we have those divides again. There's the popular people, the nerdy people, the athletes, the mathletes.
The Jesus freaks.
The Jesus freaks. There's all of those.
Yeah.
They've added some even compared to some of the older movies where we didn't have those specific groups. And again, our protagonist is the only one who gets to walk amongst them. All of them.
Well, I kind of disagree there, simply because at one point she's ostracized from all groups. She becomes the loner. So instead of being able to float, she's able to not go to any one group.
Which is a change, because I do believe she gets to float until things go too far.
Yes.
And then she gets ostracized. But it goes to show how harmful clique culture can be.
Yeah.
Because here you are thinking, well, I'm not one thing. I can be whatever I want to be. And everybody goes, no, that's too much.
There are whole studies based on the idea of cliques and how if you feel like you don't fit into any of them, you can become a loner, and that is detrimental to your physical and mental health. So,
And this movie does a pretty good job of showing that.
yes.
Because her life falls apart when she gets removed from every group.
Yes.
Yes. In 2012, a movie that we covered a couple weeks ago on the Does It Hold Up podcast, Pitch Perfect. Now, this takes it out of high school, and this puts it into college, but we still get a divide. Mm-hmm. We get the gays in one group, one a cappella group.
The Madonna group.
The Madonna group. Then we get the stoners in another group. Then we get the cool jock-like people in the other a cappella group. Then the Bard and Bellas are the basket cases because they're a hodgepodge of who knows what.
Yeah.
We still get that divide. We have, an entire scene where when she's signing up for stuff, there's just booth after booth of all these different things that she can't fit into. Mm-hmm. And I get that. Groups should exist, that you can go to like-minded people. But it was a little too much in this movie, and they used it as jokes.
It was 100% used as jokes. The only saving grace I could say is the idea of always doing things one way with the Bard and Bellas and being able to eventually change it up so that we are the princesses. And it's like, no, we're actually the basket cases. Let's
they
evolve.
start as the princesses.
Exactly.
But when they fail and they don't win the championship or the title, whatever, they have to become the basket cases and accept all kinds. And they get to be the hodgepodge.
Yes.
But once again, they get to be the hodgepodge because they're our protagonists. They don't affect any of the other groups.
Although I will say the Trebles also have a bit of that change once one person goes away who was the one maintaining status quo. Once he was gone, they could bring in someone who wasn't the stereotype.
Which is one of the things I wanted to mention about this movie, because it's a nice showcase of generational issues, because he was the senior. Mm-hmm. He had the seniority in this group, so they followed his lead. As soon as he was gone, they went, we can change everything.
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want. And they bring somebody in who doesn't fit their mold. And that's a great idea of moving forward. The younger generations can change this.
Yes.
They don't have to stick to hard cliques. You can be whatever you want to be. And I know it's such a small moment in Pitch Perfect, but I think it speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. And then in 2015, we get The Duff. And I know this is another movie that you absolutely love.
I do.
So talk to me about it.
This is a movie all about a girl finding out she's considered lesser than her friends and therefore more approachable or whatever. And one thing that I love about this movie is the fact that they make the main friend group be completely different people, but they are still shown as very close-knit friends.
Yes.
So you have the athlete, you have the brainy hippie, and you have the geek of Bianca. And they're all just really good and solid friends. They all have their own little groups, but they come together.
Yes, problem I have with the Duff, though.
Yes.
They don't show her two popular friends as much more than popular girls until the story demands that they be something else.
Yes.
If they would have started out being like, she's a popular girl, but she's also really good with computers. She's a popular girl, but she's also something else. They wait until the 11th hour to show that.
They actually don't. They do, as they're introducing these characters, they bring up those aspects. It's not like until the plot needs them to show it that you actually get to see
Exactly.
it.
That's not enough. I would like to see it throughout.
Yeah, they weren't central enough to the story for it to really matter as much.
Yes.
My big problem with this movie is that it has a one-dimensional villain. That one-dimensional villain is the influencer, the princess, basically.
Yes.
And she is nothing else, just that. And it's like, all humans are more than one thing.
What I do like about the Duff, though, is it does go back to the High School Musical thing, where by the end of the movie, I feel like they might have started to actually make a change. Mm-hmm. The school might be headed, that culture that they've created might be headed in a good direction of the nerdy girls dating the jock, but it's not just those two that it's affected. It's affected her friends, which has in turn affected other people. It's affected his friends, which in turn has affected other people. It's possible that small thing made a huge difference.
Well, it also helps that she writes her story, her homecoming story, and at the end you see the people going, viral. Let's set this message out there. So it's showing that, yes, we didn't get to see the change fully happen, but that change is likely to happen.
Yes, the start of it has occurred.
Yes.
Okay. Then we move on to the 2020s, and I haven't seen a lot. It's only 2023, beginning of 2023. Basically, you've had 3 years of the 2020s. I haven't seen a lot in that 3 years that can really showcase this, but maybe I'm just getting to the point in my life, the age in my life where I don't want to watch high school movies anymore. So it could be, but I did see a few. One was 2020's Trolls World Tour. Now, I know this isn't about a school per se, but it's about their entire world and how they are separated and defined by the type of troll that they are.
More so the type of music that troll is for. And the whole idea of this story is that if you're a rock troll, you're a rock troll. If you're a pop troll, you're a pop troll. And it isn't until they play all of the chords of each music together that they realize, oh,
that's the true power.
That is what it's meant to be. We are that thing, but we are meant to come together, and we basically have a wonderful symphony when we are all together.
And at the end of the movie, they are all together, playing their music together. Their world is put back together, and they can cross those lines pretty easily. Mm-hmm. So it does show that we can overcome it. It's just weird that we have this animated kids movie to show that.
Yeah.
That's not a movie that teenagers are going to watch. A 13-year-old maybe won't watch Trolls to get that message.
But a 10-year-old, 11, 12-year-old, people going into middle school where those cliques kind of begin.
Again, it's helping that younger generation realize you can cross those divides.
Yeah.
Then in 2022, we got 2 movies. Metal Lords, which is about a rock and roller in high school, a nerd in high school, and a band geek in high school who want to form a band because they're all outcasts in their own right. Mm-hmm. And they kind of want to get popular. They want to do something. And so they form a band. Guys, this movie came out in 2022. We don't need that. It's okay. Why were one of them not a jock who wanted to play music? Mm-hmm. Why does it have to be he's an outsider who loves metal music? He's an outsider who has no place that he fits in. She's a band geek. We're writing those divides, and we don't need to.
Yeah. There's
another way we could have done that, or at least did something outside the norm. Hey, the popular girl loves heavy metal. Just nobody knows yet. And now her whole group is going to make a band.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Then another movie we got was, I didn't watch this one, but I know you did.
Yes.
2022's The School of Good and Evil, which by the name you can tell, it literally divides people. There's one school of good, one school of evil. But I know within each school, there's also sub-cliques of popular good and not so popular good.
Basically. This movie is an interesting take on it because obviously you have the good versus evil. And the main plot of this is a girl who's always grown up thinking she was a princess goes to the evil school. And the girl who grew up thinking she was a witch goes to the princess school, the good school. And they're coming together and breaking down those barriers, basically. By the end of the movie, there is no real school of good and a school of evil. There's just the school there.
Which is a great concept. Once again, break those walls down. We don't need them. If you want to start your movie with a divide, that's fine, because that develops conflict. But by the end, if we can break that status quo and realize that's not the way it was ever supposed to be, that helps everyone.
Yeah. And especially with this kind of movie, it is the younger generation kind of looking at the older generation, slapping their wrist and going, no, bad, no.
Yes.
So I'm interested to hear what you think is the future for this kind of genre, the clique world that we see constantly in film.
Well, we just went through the history, and as you can tell, we've moved in somewhat of a good direction where movies try to break down more walls by the end. But the problem is we keep running back into the same problem where we return to the status quo. What I think needs to happen is we need a younger generation of voices to come in and change it. 40-year-old men writing about high school isn't helpful for anyone because they're so far removed that they're going to write what they know, or they're going to write the movies they grew up in, which would have been Breakfast Club and Clueless and those types of movies. We need that younger generation to come in and go, and the thing is, I'm very far removed from high school, so I can't really speak on that because I don't know what it's like anymore.
Yeah. For me, but I'm younger than you, and it's been over 10 years for me.
Yeah. So I want younger voices to come in and let us know, does this really occur anymore? Or is there more of a blurred line where you still get those are the jocks because you hang out with people who are like-minded. That's your friends. So if we all play football, we're probably going to be friends at the same time. But are the lines more blurred where that football player's like, I'm a football player and I'll hang out with those guys, but on the weekend, I'm with my friends playing rock music in the garage or taking ballet classes or
them playing D&D.
D&D. And I think even the culture outside of movies is really changing in a way as well that might be good, because you look at people like Joe Manganiello or even Vin Diesel, who are two very big movie stars right now, and like guys who hit the gym who look like they probably played football in high school and were bullies and whatever. But they're out there going, who wants to join my D&D campaign? I made a new map.
I mean, there was the whole article about Henry Cavill being a giant nerd.
And that's why he wanted to play The Witcher.
And it's like, he is literally Superman. He is like the one everyone pictures to be kind of the jock. I mean, not the Clark Kent version, yes. But, you know, when you see Superman, you're like, oh, this is a big, strong dude. And yet he does super nerdy things in real life, which is awesome. He's
a huge gamer. That's why he wanted to play Geralt in The Witcher. He wanted to bring that character to life because he's a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
So I think we are slowly seeing it, and I'm hoping that these celebrities, these people that others look up to, will understand that you can look like Henry Cavill and still be a gamer.
Yeah.
Or still be an ice skater, or it doesn't matter. You be what you want to be, and don't let these lines define you, because it hurts the youth. If you're growing up thinking you can only be one of these things, or you have to fit into a social group, that is entirely damaging to one's psyche. And I think that needs to change, and I think that won't change in the real world until Hollywood changes it.
Yeah, like, I once again, I was looking up articles and studies on clique culture, and every study that is being done is based on like college students talking about their high school years, and yet you have guidance counselors that are working in high schools being like, no, that's outdated. Mm-hmm. So getting in those fresher voices, even just consulting with people who are actually in that age range when you want to make this movie would only be beneficial.
Yeah. I do think we are moving in the right direction. I do have hope for movies in the future that we're not going to rely on these tropes of social cliques to come up with conflicts and comedy. And we'll find new ways to do it. I think it's just going to take a little more time, but I do hope we get there.
Same.
All right, well, that was a history of clique culture through film. We know there's a ton of other movies out there. Let us know in the comments which ones you know, which ones you like, what your thoughts are on clique culture and where you hope we're headed. In the meantime, keep watching movies.
Bye.